How does a man the baseball world had already written off come back to humiliate it? How does someone labeled too old, too slow, and already retired step onto a major league mound and make professional hitters look powerless? At an age when most players are long forgotten, Satchel Paige returned to the game. Not to chase nostalgia, but to dominate it. He was not supposed to be there. He was not supposed to matter anymore. Yet in front of packed stadiums and skeptical executives, a 52-year-old pitcher shattered every assumption baseball had ever made about age decline and relevance. So what kind of journey creates a man who can embarrass an entire sport decades after it denied him? To understand that, we have to go back to where this legend truly began. Long before the crowds, the legends, and the disbelief, Satchel Paige's story began in Mobile, Alabama, in the early years of the 20th century. It was a place shaped by heat, poverty, and rigid racial boundaries. Opportunities were scarce, and expectations for a black child were even scarcer. Paige was born into a large family where survival mattered more than dreams, and work came early. Childhood was not protected or gentle. It was practical, demanding, and unforgiving. As a boy, he earned money carrying luggage at the local train station. Travelers came and went, but Paige stayed behind, lifting bags heavier than his own body. To manage the load, he devised a clever system of ropes and poles that allowed him to carry more than anyone else. People laughed and called him Satchel Tree, a nickname that eventually shortened to Satchel. Even then, his life was defined by adaptation. When the world made things harder, he found another way to move forward. Trouble followed him, as it did many young men growing up without safety nets. A teenage mistake landed Paige in a reform school, a place meant to punish rather than nurture. Yet this moment became one of the most important turning points of his life. Inside those walls, he discovered pitching. With nothing but time, repetition, and raw instinct, he learned how to control a baseball, how to make it rise, dip, hesitate, and deceive. He later said that he traded 5 years of freedom for the skill that would define him forever. The reform school did not break him. It focused him. When he emerged, Paige carried more than a fast arm. He carried discipline, confidence, and a belief that hardship could be shaped into advantage. But the question still lingered. Could a boy molded by poverty and confinement ever rise beyond the limits imposed by his birthplace and his skin color? Or would the same world that hardened him eventually shut him out completely? By the time Satchel Paige began carving his reputation on baseball fields, the major leagues were not a destination. They were a locked door. For black players in America, talent alone meant nothing if the color line remained intact. So Paige's path did not move upward through farm systems or scouting reports. It spread outward across dusty diamonds, traveling teams, and cities that remembered him long after the box scores were forgotten. He entered the Negro Leagues as a young man with a live arm and a fearless presence. Almost immediately, something felt different. Hitters talked about the speed of the ball, but more than that, they talked about timing. Paige did not simply throw hard. He disrupted rhythm. He paused. He hesitated. He made batters swing when they were no longer sure what they were swinging at. Word traveled faster than statistics ever could. Instead of settling into one uniform, Paige barnstormed. He pitched wherever the money was, wherever the challenge was, wherever crowds gathered. One week he would dominate a Negro League lineup. The next he would face white Major League stars in exhibition games, striking them out in front of fans who had been told all their lives that this matchup was impossible. Each appearance added to his reputation and deepened the injustice. Everyone could see how good he was, yet no official ladder existed for him to climb. His career became a grind disguised as freedom. Paige pitched constantly, sometimes every day, sometimes multiple times a week, wearing down his arm to support himself financially. Team owners depended on his name to draw crowds, while Paige depended on his arm to survive. There were no long-term contracts, no security, no guarantees that tomorrow would be easier than today. As years passed, his legend grew larger, while the major leagues remained silent. Paige was no longer an unproven talent. He was widely considered the best pitcher alive. And yet, with each passing season, the same question grew heavier. If the door ever opened, would it open too late? Or was his greatest battle not with hitters, but with time itself? For most players, a breakout arrives early, measured by a season, a stat line, or a sudden promotion. For Satchel Paige, the turning point came wrapped in contradiction. His name was already famous, his reputation already towering, yet the world still treated him as an outsider. Then came the moment when age, injury, and doubt collided, threatening to end everything before recognition ever arrived. Years of constant pitching finally caught up with him. In Mexico, chasing opportunity and better pay, Paige suffered a severe arm injury. Doctors told him what athletes fear most. His arm was finished. The fastball that terrified hitters had betrayed him, and the career built on motion and confidence suddenly felt fragile. For the first time, the myth faced its own mortality. But Paige did not respond like a man preparing for retirement. He adjusted. He rested when others said he should quit. He studied hitters more closely than ever, leaning into deception, control, and timing. When he returned to the mound, something had changed. The velocity mattered less. The intelligence mattered more. Batters still missed, crowds still leaned forward, and slowly disbelief turned into anticipation again. By the mid-1940s, pressure built outside the game as well. The color barrier that had defined American baseball for decades was cracking. Jackie Robinson's arrival in the major leagues changed everything, and suddenly Paige's name could no longer be ignored. Not because he was young or marketable, but because he was undeniable. When he finally stepped onto a major league mound, he did not arrive as a prospect. He arrived as a challenge. Skeptics whispered about his age. Fans questioned whether the legend had been exaggerated. Executives wondered if he was nothing more than a publicity stunt. Paige answered none of them with words. He answered with outs. Each inning rewrote expectations. Each strikeout chipped away at the idea that time had passed him by. The turning point was complete. Paige was no longer a story from the shadows. He was now a living test of whether baseball itself had been wrong all along, and the sport was about to find out just how wrong it had been. When Satchel Paige finally reached the major leagues, the game expected a novelty. What it received was a reckoning. Signed by Cleveland in 1948, Paige arrived not as a hopeful rookie, but as a man carrying decades of unfinished business. The crowd came to see whether the stories were exaggerated. Opposing hitters came believing time would do what baseball never could. Both left with their assumptions broken. Paige did not overpower the league with raw youth. He dismantled it with precision. His delivery was calm, almost casual, as if the moment demanded nothing from him. Then the ball arrived late, fast, and alive. Batters swung early. They swung late. Some froze entirely. Paige worked quickly, confidently, refusing to look impressed by anyone standing 60 feet away. Down the stretch of the 1948 season, Cleveland needed stability. Paige delivered it. He won games when the pressure tightened. He quieted rallies before they could grow. More importantly, he changed the emotional temperature of the stadium. Fans were no longer watching an experiment. They were witnessing control. His presence alone altered how opponents approached a series. The climax came in October. The World Series represented the stage Paige had been denied for most of his life. When he took the mound, history followed him. He became the first black pitcher to appear in a World Series game. It was not a ceremonial appearance. It was a statement. Paige pitched with the same confidence he had shown on dusty barnstorming fields, except now the entire baseball world was watching. What made the moment so powerful was not just performance, but contrast. Younger pitchers strained and grimaced. Paige smiled. Younger hitters chased velocity. Paige made them chase patience. He had been told for years that baseball had passed him by. In reality, baseball had simply taken too long to catch up to him. That season ended with a championship. Cleveland celebrated a title, but Paige delivered something larger. He exposed the myth that greatness has an expiration date. He exposed the cost of exclusion, and he did it at an age when most players are remembered only through old photographs. Paige's peak was not defined by a long statistical arc. It was defined by timing. He arrived late, yes, but he arrived exactly when the game needed to be confronted with its own mistakes. In humiliating elite hitters at 52, Paige did not embarrass individuals. He humbled an entire system that had underestimated him for decades. After the triumph came the wait. For Satchel Paige, success in the major leagues did not erase decades of strain. It exposed them. His arm had survived endless innings, brutal travel schedules, and years without rest. But survival came at a cost. Pain was no longer occasional. It was constant. Each appearance required negotiation with a body that had already given more than it was ever meant to give. Doubt also never fully disappeared. No matter how well he pitched, questions followed him. How old was he really? Was he still a legitimate contributor or merely a symbol? Paige understood something few athletes ever do. Recognition does not always bring peace. Sometimes it simply changes the shape of the struggle. There were moments when his command wavered, when hitters finally caught up, when the crowd's roar softened into nervous murmurs. Younger arms arrived with cleaner mechanics and longer futures. Paige felt the quiet shift that all athletes eventually face. The game moves on. Even legends must decide when to step aside. Yet the tragedy of Paige's career was never collapse. It was timing. He had proven himself beyond question, but the window had opened when much of his brilliance had already been spent elsewhere. The innings that could have defined entire major league eras lived instead in stories, scattered box scores, and memories passed from one generation to the next. Still, Paige refused to fade quietly. Even in his later appearances, he carried himself with the same dignity and defiance that had defined his life. When he stepped on the mound, he did so without apology. He did not ask the game to forgive what it had denied him. He simply reminded it of what it had missed. The hardest challenge Paige faced was not injury or skepticism. It was acceptance of a truth few want to confront. Sometimes victory arrives, but not in the form we imagine. Sometimes history acknowledges you, but only after it has taken most of what you had to give. And yet, as his playing days came to an end, one question remained unresolved. How would baseball remember a man whose greatness could never be fully measured, whose impact reached far beyond wins and losses, and whose story demanded more than numbers to be understood? Satchel Paige's legacy cannot be summarized by a stat line, because his career existed across gaps that statistics were never designed to capture. The numbers that survive tell only fragments of the story. Wins, earned run averages, and appearances in the major leagues arrive late and end early. What matters more is what happened in between, in places where history did not bother to keep careful records. Paige pitched thousands of innings that never entered official ledgers. He faced lineups filled with future Hall of Famers long before integration made those matchups routine. He dominated not once or twice, but year after year, often while pitching on short rest, sometimes injured, sometimes exhausted, always expected to deliver because the gate depended on him. That durability alone reshaped what pitchers believed was possible. Beyond performance, Paige changed the psychology of the game. He treated the mound as a stage, not to mock hitters, but to control them. His calm presence created pressure before the ball was even released. Batters did not just react to speed, they reacted to uncertainty. Paige showed that intelligence, timing, and confidence could neutralize raw power. That lesson echoed through generations of pitchers who learned that dominance is as much mental as physical. His influence extended far beyond baseball mechanics. Paige became a symbol of delayed justice. He represented the countless athletes whose primes were spent proving something to a world unwilling to listen. When he finally stood on a major league mound, he carried those invisible careers with him. His success was personal, but its meaning was collective. Even his philosophy of aging challenged conventional wisdom. Paige rejected decline as destiny. He spoke openly about mindset, about refusing to look backward, about staying young by refusing to accept fear. These ideas reached beyond sports and into popular culture, where his words were quoted by people who had never watched him throw a pitch. In that way, Paige became more than a ball player. He became a voice. When baseball eventually honored him, the recognition carried a quiet tension. Induction into the Hall of Fame confirmed his greatness, but it also highlighted how long the sport had waited to say so. Paige's legacy forces an uncomfortable reflection. How many seasons were lost? How many records were never written? How many legends remain unnamed because opportunity arrived too late or not at all? What separates Paige from other great pitchers is not just what he achieved, but what he endured. He succeeded without the systems designed to support success. He adapted where others would have broken. And when given a final chance to stand on equal ground, he did not ask for sympathy. He demanded respect and earned it. His story leaves baseball with a responsibility to remember not only the victories that appear in record books, but the excellence that thrived despite exclusion. Paige's legacy lives in every conversation about fairness, opportunity, and the true cost of waiting too long to do what is right. Satchel Paige's story does not end with a final pitch or a retirement announcement. It ends with a question that baseball still has to answer. How do you measure a man who proved his greatness only after the game finally allowed him to participate on equal terms? At 52 years old, Paige did not return to the major leagues to relive the past. He returned to confront it. Every inning he pitched challenged the assumptions that had kept him out for so long. Age was supposed to defeat him. Time was supposed to erase him. Instead, he exposed how fragile those excuses had always been. Paige humbled baseball not by overpowering it, but by outlasting it. He survived systems built to exclude him, schedules designed to break him, and doubts that followed him even into victory. When the sport finally opened its doors, it found a man who no longer needed permission to be great. His legacy reminds us that talent does not follow fair timelines. Some greatness arrives late, not because it was slow to develop, but because it was forced to wait. Paige's life stands as proof that excellence denied does not disappear. It accumulates. And when it is finally unleashed, it carries the weight of every missed opportunity. So when we remember Satchel Paige, we are not just remembering a pitcher who embarrassed hitters at an impossible age. We are remembering a man who refused to let the world decide when his story was supposed to end. If this story moved you, share it. Subscribe for more untold baseball legends. And ask yourself this: how many other Satchel Paiges are still waiting for their moment to be seen?